This is Live Stream Insiders. My name is Peter Stewart. My co-host, as usual, is Krishna Day. And every week we bring you the latest video and live stream news. And this week is for the 17th of July 2016. This is episode 42.
In this week's episode, we've got lots of interesting tips coming up for you from lots of different organizations. And it doesn't matter what kind of organization you are. Maybe you're a non-profit, maybe you're an organization who's a small business, or perhaps you're a media organization. Then these tips are things that you can apply to your organization. Our goal is always to make sure that we bring you the latest updates in the world of live video, including new platforms to explore, emerging technologies, and also case studies. We've got an archive of shows of lots of case studies. You'll find them over at livestreaminsiders.com. But enough of the past. What about today?
Absolutely. Well, let's start the clock going, because we try and limit this to 30 minutes because we value your time, and it also means that it helps us focus our thoughts and make sure that we cram as much valuable content 30 minutes as possible. So the countdown clock is on. You have heard it ping in the background. We've got just under 30 minutes to get through, and we're going to be starting off as we usually do, some big themes of the week. And dare I say, Krishna, another week, another top story featuring live streaming news. And obviously our thoughts once again are with people around the world who have lost loved ones in a couple of incidents over the course of the last 7 days. First of all, the families of those caught up in the attack in Nice, and secondly, on Friday, within just 24 hours or so, the attempted coup in Turkey. There was some live streaming in France, but after the fact, and again we find ourselves talking about some horrific scenes which people have been sharing on live video, which we've spoken about in the past, and also what you can do to guard against showing people stuff that frankly you probably wouldn't want your family to see, and yet showing it to other people around the world, and the problem of perhaps showing people what has happened to people and friends and family that they may know, and the first time they realize that is by watching a live stream event. So some live streams from the streets of Nice on Thursday night, probably more though from Periscope, interestingly, from Turkey on Friday. And I guess that's probably because the nature of it, yes, there was violence, but it wasn't kind of as concentrated. And people were showing scenes of people on the streets and the army and police activity, and also, as we'll mention, some live social streaming from some TV stations as well, and also not actually live video per se, because it wasn't one-to-many, but it was one-to-one, and that is going to go down when the president appeared on what is thought to have been a FaceTime broadcast, but we'll come to that a little bit later on. Why Turkey and why Periscope specifically? We'll also touch on that in the next 27 minutes of our lives together. But Krishna, I guess they said that things are all going to be streamed, and the revolution will be live streamed, and it certainly was. The attempted revolution was live streamed, and essentially allowing anyone to gain a first-person view of history as it happened. So let's talk mainly about what's been happening in Turkey, and there were some attempts to block the likes of Facebook and Twitter. There were reports that was going on, but it still seemed to be that a lot of Periscopes, a lot of live streams, a lot of Facebook lives were getting through. And of course, if you're not familiar with the Google Map views, which are available on both of those different streams or both of those different platforms, Periscope at the top and also Facebook Live at the bottom, and you can see some big numbers and some lots of blue blobs there on Facebook Live at the bottom. And as I say, a lot of streams were showing confusion on the streets and also capturing the sound of gunfire. And the President Erdogan actually delivered his address, as I say, on FaceTime, which was rather strange that he was on social media encouraging his supporters to get out on the streets to support him, where actually, as I understand it, there's been quite a move over recent years in Turkey to close down quite a bit of social media. You know what? There's been an awful lot of talk, a lot of examination of what's been going on in Turkey regarding social media, regarding live streams specifically. I've been referring first of all to an article on Mashable.com, and you've also been looking at The Independent as well, Krishna.
Yes, they were actually referencing something that is very similar, but actually on Facebook. So you mentioned about within Periscope, there's a map. Well, in fact, they talked about the fact that you actually could see what was going on the Facebook Live map, which you can access also on desktop in terms of what was going on there. You know, one of the things I found was interesting, though, in terms of The Independent talks about using the interactive map. You can actually see all of the concentration there in terms of on Turkey. When I looked at both Facebook, but specifically at Periscope, Peter, I also was seeing a number of other things happening. I was seeing other people broadcasting the news, so live streaming what was in front of them. And that was a little bit confusing as a member of the audience. And what I did find helpful, which I don't yet see on Facebook, is that within Periscope themselves identified breaking news. So there's a little yellow button there that actually allowed me to say, okay, this is authentic. But I actually saw on Facebook people in my own network were actually streaming things live. But what they were doing is they were just pointing their phones to the TV. Having said that, we did see on TV shows when the news was being broadcast on different stations that actually they were also referencing live video content. So of course there's something that we've talked about in the past about the authentication of that content to make sure that it's okay to appear on the media. But that, yeah, certainly I thought it was interesting that The Independent picked up that there was a, you know, you could actually identify that content by looking at Facebook Live content on there.
And USA Today saying that current affairs may never be the same again. They say where once we all gathered in front of the TV to find out what was going on during times of a crisis, now the latest is provided by citizen journalists worldwide via Periscope and Facebook Live. They've also spoken to Peter Sathi, a digital media executive who runs the Creative Media Advisory firm. And he says live video so much more powerful than a 140-character tweet or a post in a Facebook news feed. He says you're there, you're immersed in it, you feel it. Nothing beats video apart from being right there. And that made me remember, as it is as well, USA Today, about the very start of Periscope and who came up with it and when they came up with it, bearing in mind that, of course, live streaming has been around for several years before Periscope and Meerkat came to the fore. But it was, ironically, Kayvon Bekpour, the co-creator of Periscope, who thought about it all when he was actually in Turkey back in 2013, and he saw a little bit of unrest erupting on the streets, and he went online trying to find a webcam or something that would show him what the scene was live a couple of streets away, and he came up with the idea for Periscope. He said, quote, I want to drop a pin and have someone show me what is happening there. Why can't I see Turkey through someone's eyes and ears? Well, of course, Periscope was born, came out a few months after Meerkat. Facebook perhaps taking its thunder a little bit, pouring a whole heap of money into Facebook Live, having celebrities and other people use the service and promote it to their 1.6 billion members around the world. But again, it's rather interesting that Periscope seems to have more users in Turkey than Facebook does in that country. So over the past 3 or 4 days, that's why Periscope has been given a bit of a boost because of, unfortunately, the news that was coming out of that particular country.
What was interesting, I don't know if you saw this as well, Peter, I followed the story over on the CNN Turk, Turk site. You'll find it on Facebook. And it was quite interesting to see that they were using Facebook Live to actually share what was going on in their premises. So they showed the soldiers coming in. They also showed them coming into the newsroom. They actually told that you saw when they were told we were taken off air, but they continued to actually bring news through Facebook Live. So I think it was an interesting thing for people who are actually in the media, and also perhaps you're in other organizations. Maybe you're in organizations that deal with disasters or other issues, but are you able to identify the platforms that you could use to be able to go live and carry on sharing that news. And you mentioned about the fact of, had all of those social networks been closed down. In fact, I actually saw Twitter on one of their feeds. They actually said that they can see it's being throttled back. They didn't say it had been closed. So yeah, that could be for all sorts of reasons. And if anybody's been caught in places where there is terrorism or there is unrest and social unrest, as unfortunately I have in the past, you'll know that actually it just gets overwhelmed. So it just made me think on, if you're going to be in that kind of situation, if you're in places where you've got to have a disaster recovery plan, know the platforms that you can turn to that actually perhaps also will continue to live stream for you, even or bring news out for you, even if kind of some of the main channels get cut down.
And you know what? Some of my journalism colleagues were suggesting that services and platforms such as Bambuser and Verify may be the ones to turn to if you are caught up in that kind of situation, because they're the ones less well known and less likely to be closed down. Plus, of course, both of those immediately save everything to the cloud. And as I understand it, Periscope and Facebook Live aren't actually saving the video on their servers, and obviously not on your phone, until you stop the broadcast. It is the live streaming that is live. It's not actually recorded anywhere until you finish that broadcast. Whereas with Bambuser and Verify, which is a way that you can send live video to a server immediately in the cloud, Verify specifically will then potentially go on and sell that content onto news organizations. But both of those may be worth considering if you are in a breaking news situation such as that. Well, we'll be talking in a few moments' time about a couple of, in fact, several, there's about half a dozen, aren't there, case studies which we've come across this week about how different organizations, how different companies, some media groups are using live streaming to get their message across, and with what success. First of all, we already know, don't we, that Facebook is obviously promoting very vigorously its live stream service, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, also throwing money at some celebrities and some big brands to jump on Facebook Live rather than any other live streaming apps. But what difference does it make? We already know that Facebook Live are going to be boosting the any live video stream over and above any video stream that is posted, a recorded video that's posted on Facebook, and well above any static images, and well above just simple text or links. They're really giving it extra boost so it appears in other people's timelines. Well, the journalism organization Pointer has experimented with live streaming on Facebook to see how much their posts of live stream video were actually boosted. And they say it was really, really enhanced. So they've given a couple of examples. Their very top post was a live video chat. It was all about Donald Trump, and that reached 283,000 users, which was 50% more than their second best performing video. But the interesting thing perhaps is, Krishna, that live video was far less popular with users as far as the metrics go. So that post, the original post, had 7,851 post clicks, almost 40 times more than the live video. So what it seems to be saying is that yes, your live video will be boosted more, however, fewer people are engaging with it. They say that's an astonishing disparity. They say our top live video reached more than 6,000 users for every engagement, while the top article post only reached 36. So they say it's hard to determine. They've only done one test. It's a little bit difficult to work out whether that's just a one-off or whether that kind of sets the scene for something going forward. They reached out to Facebook and they said, we are not prioritizing live videos more than any other video when they are no longer live. So that's interesting. So once your live video has finished and it's already in the whole list of everything else that you've done, then it's just counted as any other video, and it's not then subsequently boosted any further additionally. So a bit of disparity in the numbers about the engagement that people have perhaps with live video. So interesting times, and we'll watch out for some more stats along those lines as we go forward over the next few months.
Well, I always say never believe any statistics till you found it to be true for you, because of course, every publication that we're going to talk about, every organization we're talking about is different in terms of the kind of news, the kind of stories, the kind of content they're sharing. So it's all for us to take a look at, isn't it, ourselves? And I know there's lots of people here who are actually participating today who are also using live streaming. So at the end of today, perhaps they'd like to come in and actually tell us about some of the experiences that they've been having. Does it actually get borne out by some of the stats that we're referencing? So we're going to actually refer you now to some different case studies. And there's a great piece of content that Peter surfaced. It's over at DigiDay. We will have all the links available to you after the show for all the articles that we're referencing. This is going to be of particular interest to you if you are in the UK, because some of these publications will be much more known to you. And it's all about the most active UK publishers on Facebook Live and what they did during the month of June. And so they actually have been looking at some data from analytics firm Social Bakers. So you might be familiar with Social Bakers because they provide lots of social media statistics, both free statistics and also paid. You'll find them online at socialbakers.com. And what they identified in terms of for the main publications is that in June there were 533 live videos posted across the UK's top 100 media pages, and that's a 72% increase from the number of live videos posted in May, which was 310. So that just gives you an idea about actually what's been happening, and we've been reporting on in terms of case studies and how organizations have been using it in terms of over the last number of months. And in fact, they actually go through a number of examples. So if you're from the UK or you know the UK market, the publications that they're referencing, the number of Facebook Live interactions were the greatest on Sky News, followed by the Daily Mail, followed by Motorcycle News, followed by the Sun Football, followed by UK Sport and Reuters UK as well. And not surprisingly, actually, one of the key things is that sports plays a big role in that, and also football, because of course there's been a lot of football going on, and it's an amazing summer for sport in Europe. So I'm not going to go through every one of those. If the UK market is of interest to you and those publications are of interest to you, you'll actually find a really interesting analysis about what was relevant around all of those different publishers. But it's great to see that kind of analysis has been done, and they actually go through by publication actually how many live streams and what were the insights they got having analysed those live streams.
And it's really interesting also, they're talking about the number of staff and how many videos they're producing each month. Of course, when Krishna is talking about football, we're talking about football soccer, the original football, rather than American. But have a very quick view, fashion, beauty shoots, food tips and things like that for the Daily Mail. And also they're talking about getting fans out, getting journalists out in front of fans as soon as possible, protests, press conferences, football stadiums, and a roundup of news for the day, sporting fixtures and talking heads, and things like that, live motorcycle news, races and track days, and as Krishna says, anything to do with sport as well has been going down a bomb. Now, talking about going down a bomb, what about stuff costing a bomb? And of course, if you are watching a live stream on your mobile phone, that could cost you an awful lot of money because you're obviously downloading all of that data. You're streaming all that data to your phone. And the problem is particularly significant perhaps in the developing world, where they have less of a coverage of things like Wi-Fi or less stable data coverage and phone coverage. So Facebook wants to change that with a new download option that it started testing over the last week. And that means that people will be able to download Facebook Live videos for offline viewing within the Facebook app. Now, obviously, they've thought, this could be open to a little bit of piracy, so they're securely locking the videos within the app, so they're not actually going to be on your memory, as it were, so not actually on your phone, and also publishers can stop people downloading their videos in the first place. But that's really interesting because, of course, it is particularly more expensive in some of the developing world countries, so to be able in future potentially to download videos that you've seen from Facebook into the Facebook app and then watch them at your leisure when you're away from your Wi-Fi connection, and a 3G or a 4G or soon to come 5G is going to be really expensive for you. They say by unlocking the ability to watch video offline, Facebook could acclimate its developing world users to organic Facebook videos, thereby allowing it to slip in lucrative video ads without sticking out. Yes, I thought that Facebook will be getting something out of it, and of course more advertising. If you want to read more about that, it's via techcrunch.com.
But what happens if you're not a large organization? What happens if you're not a media organization? What if you're a small or medium enterprise? And how could you be using live video in those circumstances? Well, that's in fact what's covered in an article by smartcompany.com. In fact, what they do is they reference an article that they too had read, which was actually on Social Media Examiner, where there was a number of examples of organizations using live video for their small business. And I don't know if you read it. I actually did read it and commented on that Social Media Examiner post. And guess what, Peter? One of the case studies is somebody who's been a guest on this show. It was actually the Funky Fairy. So the Funky Fairy was actually on our show. They were early adopters of live streaming. They were on Meerkat. They then subsequently moved on to Periscope. They still do some live streams on Periscope. And then they've also been exploring Facebook Live. So if you want to hear more about them in depth, you can go over to livestreaminsiders.com, but more to this article. So basically what they were talking about in terms of how you could actually make Facebook Live work for your small business. And of course, this applies to other platforms as well. It doesn't have to be just Facebook. And they were saying, you know, lots of small businesses actually will be keen to use it. Well, my experience in terms of small businesses is that they can actually be fleet of foot of actually using these platforms because they don't have perhaps as many people to actually go to get agreement and to get sign off to be able to share it. And that's in fact what happened in these three situations. One was a fitness business that they focused on. One was the Funky Fairy, which is a store. They're an online store now, so they actually produce merchandise and they do personalized gifts for people, so you'll find them online. And one was actually another business who, again, I actually have met in real life, and it's actually a coach who's based in Scotland, and I actually met her when I was up at a conference in Scotland recently, and she's been, again, was using Periscope and more recently has been using Facebook Live for her target audience, which is mumpreneurs, people who are actually small businesses, who are mums, who are looking to set up their own business. And what they were talking about is really 4 useful tips. So if you're going to go on Facebook Live, they said, think about what's the format for you in terms of what you will be streaming. So they, in the article over on Smart Company, they gave examples of the kind of content you could be sharing if you're in any one of those kinds of businesses. Think about the people who will be your on-screen talent, as they say in the trade, but actually who's going to be the person who's going to be there in front of the camera. And I say the person because it doesn't always have to be a face to camera. So if we think about the Funky Fairy as an example, actually very often what they'll stream is the work that's going on in terms of customization. It doesn't always have to be actually what you're sharing in terms of you in front of camera. And they did that for many, many, many hundreds of hours of live stream that they've done probably in the last 18 months. It's always been around where they're going, what they're doing, but also showing you that what happens initially when they had a physical store, but actually then now in terms of more about the workroom and what's going on, how they're customizing things, which of course gets people really interested in terms of what that is. And then, you know, people might say, oh, I want one of those. How do I go ahead and look to make a purchase? And then the other one is about the third point that they mentioned in the article is about how to handle comments. Now that is always a challenge, isn't it? So here on Livestream Insiders, Peter always takes a look down at the comments, and I tend to take a look, but I also typically am the one that's commenting. That's just how we've taken the show to be. But of course, if we were doing this show and we were outside, it may not be so easy for us to do that. So you might have to have somebody else who comments. And if you're a small business and you don't have the people in-house, then one of the things that you could have there is maybe a member of the community. So you maybe have a very faithful listener or a very faithful advocate of yours, and you ask them to be the person who actually speaks on your behalf in terms of the comments. Because, of course, we know that's one of the key things is being aware of what the questions are that people are asking and actually responding to them Or in some case, it might be typing in a response as well. Another little tip I want to give you is one of the things I do behind the scenes, and I don't know if any of you do this when you are managing live streams, those of you who are watching, is actually I have a set of notes that are already ready. So I know what I'm going to put in at the end of the show. I don't have to sit there and type out in terms of every single word. Of course, I do have to respond in real time to comments that come in. I actually do have some pre-prepared sentences that I can use. It just makes it a bit easier. And it means that I actually don't get a link wrong, or it might mean that I actually make sure that I get other content accurate there. And then the other thing is they said the fourth point was about what's the message that you want to put out. So do take a look at that article over at Smart Company. It was really nice to see two businesses that I know and one that we have together interviewed, Peter, in terms of being featured in that article originally on Social Media Examiner.
5 minutes to go. Let's do some more tips from the top. When I say the top, I'm talking about the professional broadcasters. They don't know everything, but they can kind of point everyone else into a general direction. And apparently the news broadcasters are set to invest in improving the audio and visual quality of Facebook Live video because they want to do much, much more of it, as we were hearing a few minutes ago about what Sky News are doing. It's the latest development. Zayed El-Rumli, yes, he's a digital producer who's part of the social team at Al Jazeera. He's told the UK Press Gazette there's a big push at Al Jazeera to make live videos broadcast quality. Not necessarily broadcast style, but high definition, not necessarily done on a phone and with good audio. Al Jazeera, they say, really wants to raise the bar. The BBC does a great job. They do lives consistently and are in a lot of interesting locations, but a lot of it is phone heavy. And we want to take things a step further. So that's what they're working on at the moment. Back to Sky News, Richard Evans is with them. He says they want to ramp up their Facebook Live output as well. They've had more than 10 million views of a total of 200 live videos. That sounds like a pretty good metric. They've got a team of 7 social media producers who, amongst their remit, also have to do Facebook Live videos. And they say they can go to interesting and global stories, and it's really, really that interactivity is the key point for them, as well as the mobility as well, being able to engage meaningfully with viewers directly in real time. But they do point out in this article from the pressgazette.co.uk, before broadcasters can commit to a 24-hour stream, Facebook must first make some changes on its side. Can you think what that might be? There is an inbuilt problem, isn't there, Krishna, with doing a 24-hour live feed on Facebook, and that is that if it's live all the time, it's just going to slip down to the bottom of the newsfeed. No one is going to see it after a couple of hours. So what they want Facebook to do is to make the platform a little bit friendlier and have somewhere at the top of a feed, maybe like I guess kind of a pinned tweet or that kind of thing, which is always going to stay in one particular place on your Facebook page, which is always going to be that live feed. So that should be really interesting. So more and more developments. And you know what? If BBC and Sky and Al Jazeera and several other big broadcasters are behind that kind of idea, heck, Facebook Live will do it, I am sure, especially if they can see somewhere to make a few spondulics out of it. You know what? We've just got 2 minutes left. So I tell you what, shall I talk a little bit more about some of the other content that has come through? Gosh, there's another really big article about what one particular organisation learned from doing from analysing 30 days of Facebook Live videos. But I tell you what, let's skip from that. Excuse me, just playing with my notes a little bit, because we can also tell you about some of the other things that should be happening over the last few days, because both Periscope and Facebook Live are going to be in bed with the final round of conferences, the conventions, which are going to be going on in the United States ahead of the big election a little bit later on. So certainly in Cleveland and Philadelphia, Facebook is getting behind people and hoping delegates and politicians and members of the media are going to be using Facebook Live as much as possible. Twitter is also going to be live streaming those conventions as well through a deal with CBSN, so the CBS News and their news department, to carry those conventions. It's going to be a simulcast, incidentally, to appear on Twitter whenever the convention is in sessions. That's a little bit different. So one is hoping that individuals will go behind the scenes and use Facebook Live, and Twitter/Periscope are going to be feeding the CBS News feed. Of course, we already know that Periscope struck a deal with NFL to stream packages of Thursday night football games a little bit earlier on in the year. And also there was live coverage of Wimbledon and the Wimbledon tennis matches on Twitter about a fortnight ago as well. And also, just before we finish, Twitter is going to be streaming 3 different Bloomberg TV news programs later on this autumn/fall as well. So what are we learning from all of this? Boy, oh boy, there's still everything to play for. They are still battling it out in the world of live streaming. Celebrities on board, big companies on board. Sometimes they are being paid to stream, and otherwise they are being told, you know what, come on our platform, we'll give you increasing exposure to our millions of people and supporters and friends and fans. And that is it. That is the 30-minute update from Livestream Insiders for another week. Thank you so much indeed for watching. Special show next week, Krishna.
Absolutely. So we are thrilled that we're going to be joined next week by somebody that we both met at MojoCon in Dublin. His name is Yusuf Omar, and he's the mobile editor for the Hindustan Times. So we're actually going to dedicate the show to a conversation with him, because there's lots of really interesting things that he's been able to do in India recently in terms of both using Snapchat and also live video for storytelling and raising awareness of issues that need to be out there in terms of with public interest. And I think you'll find it a very interesting show. I was certainly engaged with him when I met him in real life. I've enjoyed seeing his content over the last number of months since we were in Dublin together, but actually it's going to be great to have him on the show to give you some insider tips. And you know what? How he's building up capability amongst an organization in terms of who have not been using mobile for actually live video in this way, and how he's actually going ahead and doing that. So do make sure you join us. You'll be able to find the archive of our show at livestreaminsiders.com. If Facebook is the place that you'd like to be, then again, come over to our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/livestreaminsiders. You'll find the archives of the show posted there. And otherwise, make sure that you register for the next show. We'll put the link here for you to be able to come along and join us. Come and ask your questions in terms of how you too could be using live video in your organization.